Hi, guys. Welcome to Real Food Recovery. It's episode 33, The Real Cost of Food Addiction. Hey, Jamie, how are you?
Hi, Paige. Good to see you. Glad to be here.
I know. I'm ready to jump right back in. I've missed you, so here we go. This is a good one, guys. This is such a great topic and one that we can easily overlook. However, at first glance, we think of monetary implications when it comes to the cost of processed food addiction. But there's a lot of other costs associated with these, the least of which are financial, although that is a major contributor. And when we think of all areas of our life that are impacted by addiction, we have to consider the big picture that encompasses physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, financial, like we said, as well as connection to ourself or connection to relationships. So we're going
Hmm.
to talk today about the strain that addiction, more specifically food addiction, plays on each one of these areas.
Yeah,
This will be an enlightening episode, and we are curious to know if there are any new revelations that you may not have realized during this. If so, we really want you to leave your thoughts in the comments and let us know what you're thinking.
please.
So, yeah, we are going to start with physical. Okay, are you are you sitting down? Everyone that's listening, I hope you're sitting down.
It's a
Heart
list.
disease, diabetes, digestive problems, malnutrition, obesity, chronic fatigue, chronic pain, pain in joints, sleep disorders, reduced sex drive, headaches, lethargy, arthritis, stroke, kidney, liver disease, osteoporosis. So as we're going along, if any of these sound familiar, if you want to drop comments in and
Hmm.
the chat, you can do that too. For
Yeah.
me, certainly I had digestive problems with acid reflux, and the cost to get that under control, if you do the prescriptive medication, it's very expensive. I'm not, and I'm sure I just didn't feel my best overall, even though none of these major diseases had shown up for me yet. Yet is the big word there. I do know that diabetes runs in my family, so that was certainly a concern. And malaise and just that emotional toll after a binge, it was palpable. I'm horrible, dark, 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 ugly place. What about you, Jamie?
Yeah, I love that you talked. I love that you use the word malaise, because it's true. For
Mhm.
me, all of the above sound familiar, either in my family, or not, except the kidney disease, but kidney stones run in my
Ooh.
family, big on one side, big time. I didn't have osteoporosis yet. And I love that you said yet, because I also was running right on the cusp, right? I was in my early to mid 30s when I woke up and realized I needed help. And so I hadn't experienced a lot of those major things yet. But I was dealing with sleep apnea. I was dealing with sexual dysfunction. I was dealing with reproductive dysfunction. I was dealing with all, of course, obesity and morbid obesity and joint issues and mobility issues, breathing issues. That I was tested for a heart ejection fraction issue. I was, let's see, had emotional dysregulation. Certainly, just my mental clarity was not there. I was not able to retain and remember and connect with information on a regular and healthy way. And I was not, I was heading towards diabetes, right? I was pre-diabetic,
Oh,
as my
you
doctor
were?
told me, which we all know now is just non-insulin dependent diabetes. I mean, I
Hmm.
was diabetic. I just wasn't at the threshold of insulin dependence. And
Hmm.
it's so, but back then I'm like, I'm good. They say I'm pre-diabetic, and I've got these really, really high numbers in cholesterol and in my triglycerides, they're super high. And my doctor says she's concerned, but it didn't that didn't translate to me.
Yeah.
I could see that she was concerned. I could hear her say these things, but it didn't translate to me as, okay, now what do I do?
Hmm.
It was just, for me back then, it was a lot of fear and questioning and confusion more
Hmm.
than anything else. And I didn't understand that changing my food and finding, eventually recovery could change all of those for me.
Hmm. Amazing.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, I've heard many experts talk about how sick we are as a nation. We know that 1.6 million people die a year from diet related diseases. Well, guess what? That comes at a huge cost.
Mhm.
Um, and that for me is such a big eye opener, because it's not only a cost to us individually. It's a cost to the entire medical system,
Right.
the government, our economy,
Everybody
the
pays.
environment,
Mhm.
everyone. Let's not fool ourselves, folks.
Right.
It's not just the folks, those of us that are struggling with diseases that are affected. All of us are affected. The
Mhm.
reality, the cost of being sick is tremendous. And we've heard it said at some point, we're going bankrupt in our country because of our diet. I could not
Yeah.
agree more. I
Mhm.
could not agree more. I also believe that that there is, in some ways, in some aspects of maybe of the government, that they think that there's an incentive to sort of keeping us a little bit sick, right? There's a financial
Mhm.
incentive. There's maybe a control incentive to keeping us all a little bit under the bubble.
Fat,
I don't
sick,
know
and
if that's,
miserable.
sorry.
Fat, sick, and miserable are money makers.
Yes, exactly. And I hate to think that anyone thinks that way, but I'm old enough and experienced enough to know differently.
I
To,
think they
you
call
know,
that jaded.
a little bit, a little bit. That's true. So here's the thing though. Obesity has nearly tripled since 1975. P.S. That's the year I was born. So
Ooh.
I am sure I aged like a fine glass of alcohol from the barrel, Paige. Anyway, that I don't drink, ironically. But anyway, I digress. But okay, so 1975, I was born, obesity starts to rise. You know what else happened in
Right.
1975? Right
Yeah,
before that, in the late 60s and early 70s, were the tobacco, the precedents were set for the big tobacco cases. These
that's right.
huge settlements were reached, and big tobacco shifted into big food. And by 1975, they were creating processed foods. And
Right.
wouldn't you know it, everyone's transferring their nicotine use to food, and obesity starts to rise. There is no doubt in my mind, it's all correlated.
And
You
then
can
add on
see
the
it
high
in stats.
fructose corn syrup that comes right along after that.
Exactly. And then it affects our insurance premiums, of course, right?
Ooh.
People can't afford standard insurance anymore, particularly if they're self-employed, or if
Mhm.
they have, if they're aging, right? They're aging out of, like, let's say their company offering of insurance. If they've
Right.
retired, they have huge, sometimes they can have huge costs for insurance,
Yeah.
Medicare or Medicaid, that,
Mhm.
that if they don't have the correct parts covered, they can incur some costs there. That is, for me, I'm very grateful that my company offers excellent benefits, and my
Right.
husband's company offers excellent benefits. I'm in healthcare, so I appreciate that. I don't take it for granted, but I also know that I really don't want to ever pull that lever
I
on
know.
my benefits for things that are
Right.
preventable,
Right.
for things that, so it really stinks, because what becomes of those that can't afford insurance or medication?
No.
If you can't afford your condition, you're in a pickle, as we say, and pardon the pun, but it's very true. So what's the solution?
I mean, I but here's what I do know. So I don't know the answer to that other than I know this is hard, and I'm not saying this lightly, but the only thing I know to do is focus on prevention. That's what I've done all my life. I'll talk about this a little bit later on. I don't have standard insurance because I'm self-employed. So not only I take my prevention methods very seriously for a number of reasons, but we also need to focus on education, connection, support, and I really would love to see more legislation on processed foods, more disclaimers, more
Mhm,
labels saying may cause. But
mhm.
that's my take on it. Prevention. I wish we had spent so much more money on prevention than
Yeah.
we do on medication.
Yes, I agree. And an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I mean, it's not a saying from our great grandparents for no reason. It's absolutely true. It's words that I really truly remind myself of, every day still. And there are many times in a given day where I will just tell myself, hey, you know what? My future self is going to thank me here for
Hmm.
not making that choice today. I
Mhm.
work hard. I work hard. I have, you know, between the real food recovery work that we do and my day job, so to speak, that I also love. I easily work 80 hours a week, and I don't want to give it back to a healthcare system tomorrow because of the poor choices I make for my health today. I just don't want to do it.
Not only are you a hard worker, you're a hard player too, because you're very socially involved too. I don't know how you do all the things that you do in a day or a week, but yes, you are a very busy girl. So who has time to be sick?
Yeah, exactly. And well, and being up here in the Northeast again, I'm not as social out in the world as far as with, you know, going out with friends and things like that, because
Mhm.
it's a different kind of social network here.
Mhm.
But I do get out a lot, right? Out in
Mhm.
nature, out in the community, out at different events, just to be out and be part of them. Like this weekend,
Mhm.
tomorrow and Sunday, there's, you know, huge series of concerts that are the whole weekend. There's multiple stages, and the whole town, part of this town next to me is going to be filled with
Mhm.
concerts. And I'll definitely be walking up there and just experiencing it and taking it all in. Just, you know, big bands, and it'd be like a lot of fun to see it. I'm not doing, you know, I'm not paying it for a ticket. I'm not going in, but I'm just going
Mhm.
to be in the area.
Mhm.
And that to me is feels like a connection with life. And I have to be ready, right? Because there's going to be a lot of queues in those areas. There's going to be a
Mhm.
lot of processed foods
Food
being
trucks,
peddled.
vendors. Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of vendors. So I just need to be mindful of, okay, I can go and enjoy the music, and when it's too much, I just take myself home.
I love that story because I think that plays right into prevention because you're getting out, you're getting the endorphins from movement.
Mhm.
You're also getting the dopamine hit from the music and enjoying
Yes.
connection, the oxytocin from connection. And so you're hitting all those high notes of those beautiful neurotransmitters that we love that keep us happy and well. Huge aid in prevention. Huge, huge, huge. Good
Yeah,
job.
I'm excited. So next is the mental cost of food addiction. As we know as we gain weight, our dopamine receptor sites start closing down. It's
Mhm.
called down regulation. In other words, our pleasure pathways become less available. Why is this? Well, we're going to tell you a little bit here, but in our real food recovery community, we actually have a real food recovery academy. And there's a
Mhm.
whole course that Paige developed called The Secret to Happiness. And it's
Mhm.
all about the dopamine balance and imbalances that we have as humans, and how to naturally replace those dopamine imbalances and rewire, you know, not rewire, but get them back into balance.
Mhm.
And so it's a great course in our Real Food Recovery Academy at realfoodrecoveryforyou.com. But essentially, the why behind this is because we overtax the system. It takes more and more of our drug of choice to get the same high. And
Mhm.
so we lose our ability to take joy in the simple pleasures of life. Joy examples for, you know, we just talked about some. It might be for me, just being in the vicinity. I'm not even paying to go in, but being in the vicinity of a
Even
concert.
better.
Exactly. I get all the benefit of hearing the music and the crowd and you know the joy of it, but I don't have to pay any money. It's great.
There's
It's
the girl
great.
on the sidewalk dancing by herself.
That's right. Oh, that's the fun part. There's so many of us that don't want to pay, that we just go. Great. Don't make an outdoor stage if you don't want us to be
Yeah.
there. I mean, I'm just gonna ride up there on my bike with my beach chair on my back. What do they think I'm gonna do?
Oh, that's just Jamie.
That's just me. But you know, if you go to see your kids or grandkids play a baseball game, learning a new
Mhm.
language, getting together with friends, all because once we're in deep addiction, we lose our ability to govern with reason. And that's where only governing really, what we're trying to govern at that point is the balance of pain and pleasure, moving
Mhm.
away from pain, going towards pleasure. It's an awful cycle. It's an awful cycle. So what happened to me was I was not able to see the beautiful things in life. I was not able to
Mhm.
experience these
Mhm.
life-giving experiences because I was so mired in avoiding pain by seeking pleasure, avoiding pain by seeking pleasure. Oh, pain's back. I'm going to go find pleasure. But over here on this whole other side of my brain and my life was an entire world that I was missing.
Right. You know, it's interesting when we talk about the pleasure pain balance too, because so often we think people are on drugs or whatever,
Mhm.
whatever addictive substance they've got, that they're just trying to seek pleasure. What they're trying to do is
Or
rebalance to homeostasis, because
yes,
you're working off the negative in when you're in addiction, and you're just trying to get uh, everything back to normal. So once you get deep into the addiction, really there's no pleasure left. You're just trying to get out of pain. So
exactly. That's
for
right.
me, it is an awful cycle. I've shared this experience a few episodes back about being at a family dinner playing with my grandkids, and I started in on the salty snack food, and for the first time I could almost feel this blood flow shifting from that frontal lobe to the center brain. I went completely offline. I mean, you have a great phrase that I love. You checked out of life or something like
Yeah,
that.
took me out of life.
Yeah, it took me out of life, because my focus turned from my grandchildren that I love so much to the food. I
Mhm.
could not stop it. It was miserable. I was miserable. I went home miserable, and I feel the misery just thinking about it, honestly. I don't
Yeah.
want to live in that state of loss of control and that feeling of hopelessness. I distinctly remember another family occasion where I sat down with this cake pan in front of me, and I was just eating the top layer off the cake. I was so embarrassed because my family was laughing at me. They thought I was being a clown, kind of, and I pretended to laugh along, but I literally could not stop
Mhm.
eating. That pain of withdrawal, the pain of stopping, is so intense. And it's so bizarre because you're painfully full, but yet the pain of not getting another bite is
Yeah.
even bigger, if that's
Yes.
possible, because it's inside the brain.
Yeah,
It's an
and it
itch that
automates
you're
it.
trying to scratch. That pain inside the brain is bigger. It swallows up the pain in your digestive system. That's how, I almost want to use the word motivating it is to continue to take that next bite. It's total torture. And
Yeah.
you can't even stop yourself. You don't know how to get out of it. My
Mhm.
sister came and took the cake pan away from me. That's the only
Yeah.
reason. And when she did that, I was panicked.
Yeah.
I was panicked because I'm like, okay, I mean, they probably couldn't stand to watch it anymore, but she took away the drug out of,
Mhm.
I was just left there with an empty fork. So it's, that is burnt in my memory, but I was in
Mhm.
so much pain when the cake was gone, even though I could not shove another piece in my mouth.
Right, right. Yep, I totally get it. And there was I have too many moments like this to count. Too many. Of course, just, morbid obesity. I was eating like that daily. I was eating like that daily. And I'm constantly reminded of my poor mental health and emotional health when I was in the processed food. I really was a totally different person than I am today. Emotionally dysregulated, mentally foggy. I was trying to control everything all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't from a place of confidence. It was from a place of fear. It wasn't from a place of soundness of mind or experience or education. It was totally from a place of fear. And if this doesn't happen this way, then it's going to be this way, and then what do I do? Right? It was just like it was constant anxiety that I was coming from.
Mm-hmm.
It was totally untenable. When I was in a place, oh gosh, I maybe 2015 or so, I graduated from grad school, and I had been really in a place of, I didn't understand processed food addiction back then, but I was in a place where I was preparing for a fitness competition. I had lost a bunch of my weight, and I just thought it'd be fun to be on stage and be judged for my body, which was a signal of how sick I was.
Had you lost all your weight during grad school? Did you go into grad school?
No, I lost it before grad school, and then towards the end of that phase, I started grad school.
Okay.
And then so I kept refining it
Mm,
during grad school, and I was doing a lot of all my food prep and all my bringing my meals with me. And 2012 to 2014 was when I
mhm,
was in grad school or so. And
mhm.
so we had a big graduation party. A lot of people, and this is my ex-husband and I had graduated together. And so it was
Oh,
just both sides of the family and friends and neighbors, and it was just a big shindig. And of course, for the first time, because I'd been training, because I'd been eating really clean with this fitness goal, everyone told me, oh, just enjoy the party.
Oh no. I
Yeah,
know.
well, it's a huge sheet cake, right? And of course it was, I don't know who controls the sheet cake industry, but it they always oversell it. They're like, oh, you've got 4 people coming, you need about a 3 foot by 6 foot sheet cake. Like, who are they? Who's
1 foot per person.
you 1 foot? Duh. Like, and it really is it anyway. So we had this sheet cake, and I think about a third, maybe a little under a half was gone, right, from the party. And it sat in the garage because it was a little chilly still, so we kept it in the garage. And every day I'd go out there with the fork and I would just eat off that sheet cake for like a solid week. A solid week. And sheet cake doesn't keep well, right?
Frosting
For a
does.
week. Oh, well, anyway, I remember thinking, this is getting dried out. I don't think I need to eat this anymore. That's how long I was eating off of it. And it wasn't like out in the air, right? It wasn't, just hanging out on a car lid, or a car hood, but it was on a shelf in the garage in its box, because my ex and I could not see how we could throw out half this cake.
And it just I want to make the point about, though, the dopamine drip in the brain. There is such a thing when
Absolutely.
it's out there. There is a
Absolutely.
dopamine drip that starts happening when
Absolutely.
you are aware. That's why we talk about get it out of your house. Don't even have it.
Absolutely. So
That addiction knows where everything is in those cupboards.
absolutely. Yes.
Let's
And
be
I
clear.
am, and guys, I'm 15 years in to this journey, and it is still true for me. If I have it in the house, I will go for it. It
Mhm.
just, I cannot have it around me. And it's not a sign of my weakness. It's not a sign that I'm a horrible person. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with me. It
No,
just
you're
means
normal.
I'm totally normal. My brain and my body and my physiology and my chemistry is acting exactly the way it should around hyper-processed, hyper-palatable chemicals.
As
And here's the other thing. Sorry, Paige, just
Go
really
ahead.
quick, I want to share. Never did it occur to us, right, to throw the cake away, because we were both, at that time, we were both probably into that processed food, or into processed foods in general. So we were both sort of confirming each other in that way, and or didn't want to address the other person. The other thing that I do now is, if, let's say, I am hosting an event and somebody does bring something like a cake or something like that, which it was rare. I can count on one hand and maybe a year how often that happens, and that's a lot. I will cut, for everyone else, I will cut such big hunks of that cake that I will look around and be like, okay, there's 4 people. You're all getting a quarter of this cake.
Yeah,
And I will cut it. I will plate it, give it to them. And then they look at me like I'm insane. And I'll say, eat what you want and throw away the rest.
that's right. Oh, I
And
love
this way it's their
that.
choice. It's their, and it's now it's like a family joke. Don't let Jamie cut the cake, because there won't be any left when she cuts it, because
Right.
she gives it all away.
That's right.
I'm like, you're damn right I do.
Love that. I know. I love that so much. We had an episode. So of course, guys, we record and then the recording comes out later. It just so happens that our interview with Chef AJ came out today, and
Mhm.
I was listening to it, and it's good, by the way. So go back and listen to episode 25. But she gives her number 1 tip in there from Dr. Doug Lyle. And this goes to what Jamie's saying, that work harder. His number 1 tip was work harder on your environment than you do on your house. I was thinking about you talking about the cake. Work harder on your environment than you do on yourself.
Mhm.
So in other words, get the cake out of the house. Don't have
Right.
the cake in the house. Don't have it in the garage. Don't
No,
even have it in
no.
the neighborhood.
And don't have it in good Lord, whatever you do, don't have it in the garage next to a box of forks. Whatever you do, don't do that.
Everybody has that box of plastic disposable forks in their garage, don't they? Just because they gotta have a place to store it. The 500 pack from Costco.
Which is probably where that cake came from back in the day.
Yeah.
Bought the cake and some forks.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I think some subcategories of the mental are spiritual, emotional, and connections or relationships. I know that if you are a spiritual person, it is difficult to tap into that place of connection with your higher power if you're deep into the food. It destroys the ability to sink into a spiritual place for me, especially when you are in that much pain, you have no connection to that spiritual component of your life. It
Mm.
overshadows our peace. I don't know if any of you who are listening have found that to be true, but for me, I find it difficult to experience that sense of the spirit. If I'm stuffed beyond capacity, that story that I was telling about me and the panic cake, believe me, there was no spiritual impressions going on.
No.
I didn't have that extra wisdom that I desperately have to have in my life. I couldn't tap into my own tuition. I mean, lights were out. So it's very painful and depressing, and certainly praying, if that's your form of spirituality, not an option. Just not an option at that
No,
time.
it's not even on my radar. And it wasn't, right? It wasn't on my radar. And I didn't have, back in my addiction days, I didn't have time to have a God, because food was it. Like food was my God.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was out of the food and not understanding about addiction and spirituality's role in my life, I made people my God,
Mm-hmm.
right? For a little while.
Yeah.
So it's so deep, guys. It's so much more than the food. You know,
Yeah.
I had no prayer life when I was in food, right? And for me, when I think about addiction and how it can be debilitating to mental health, especially if there's a lack of support or inadequate help, some of the psychological effects that may be experienced include, and I can definitely attest here, low self-esteem, depression, panic attacks, increased feelings of anxiety, feelings of sad, hopeless, or in despair, increased irritability, especially if access to desired food is restricted, emotional detachment or numbness, suicidal ideation. Yeah, I can raise my hand to all of those. I don't know about the suicide thing, like that I was mentally aware of trying to commit suicide by any one act. For me, though, it was daily little decisions of eating such at the end of my addiction, that period. It was so egregious the way I was eating that I wonder now if I wasn't trying to kill myself with food.
Well, you've heard that death by a million cuts.
Yes, that was it.
So I know for me, definitely depressing, especially because when you are in it and you don't know how to get out of it. For me, I think that was the biggest mental struggle is I don't know how to get out of this. It's a setup for despair. I just know that getting into recovery has opened up a whole new world for me. Not to mention, when people are in this addiction, they have to actually go through a mourning period for those favorite foods or traditional foods, or joining in with others when they're eating those foods. But you just have to look at it through the lens of reality. These favorite foods of mine that I'm missing out on, in air quotes, they were killing me physically and mentally.
Absolutely.
They were not my friend.
Absolutely.
What about you?
Yeah,
What?
that kept me from living the life I could truly be living. And I, of course, it's not the food. Like, no, Nabisco wasn't in my house holding me down, shoving me full of Cheez-Its or whatever they sell. But it wasn't like the food was doing it to me. Obviously, I was choosing that. But let's be honest. I mean, I know that some folks who don't struggle with processed food addiction, they think it's a willpower thing, or that you're weak, or something wrong with you. I was acting exactly the way I should have acted, given the amount of chemicals I was putting in my body. I was in a constant state of withdrawal.
Yeah.
Every time I wasn't eating, I was in withdrawal. So of course, what is an addict going to do? They're going to go back to their drug. So the
I'm
pain.
glad you said that.
Yeah.
I love, everybody write that down. If you're deep in the food, in those chemicals, if you're not eating, then you're in withdrawal. I never thought of it like that.
Yeah, if you're eating a lot of processed foods, absolutely, or all processed food.
Yeah. That's all I can picture is Nabisco holding you down and shoving Cheetos down. I can't. Now that is going to be burnt in my image, in my mind.
Would they wear like little
orange capes?
Yeah. Oh, all right. I was thinking they'd wear like little Mario Brothers overalls and hats, but like bright orange.
Oh gosh,
or
we
red.
digress. We digress. So, not to be overlooked is the impact on your social life and relationships. The social effects of food addiction are decreased performance at work or school, isolation from loved ones, division within family units, lack of enjoyment in hobbies or activities you once enjoyed, avoidance of social events or functions, risk of jeopardizing finances or career. Any of these sound familiar to those that are listening? Definitely at one point, there was nothing more important for me than sugar. It was a driving force in my life. I'm ashamed to say it, but nothing was as fun or as interesting to me at that time than to get high from the hit of sugar. I mean, that was like the ultimate pleasure seeking, that my addiction was driving me. If I went to social functions, it was only for the food. I really didn't care about getting to know anybody better. I'm being
Yeah.
completely raw and honest.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Food was my best friend. It was my confidant, spiritual source, right? Because I'd made it my God. Of course, I chose it over the people in my life. There were many times that I would turn down social invitations so I could stay home and eat, or I would leave social things early after eating like a, small serving of whatever was there, so I could go and get whatever food I wanted to get and eat it the way I wanted to eat it. And I have friends of mine who are alcoholics in recovery, and they'll tell me all the time, like, I wanted my spouse or partner or parent or child to go to bed so that I could drink
Yes.
the way I wanted to drink. And I
Yeah.
think, for me, night eating was never a thing for me, like even late night eating or anything. I don't really remember that being a thing for me, but I understand that it's a thing for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's important for folks to understand that if you're choosing to move out of life,
Yeah.
right, for any reason, alcohol, video games, food, gambling, shopping, if you're moving away from community and connection and life and being present and being comfortable in the present, there's probably something that needs a little bit more examination.
Yeah.
And my first marriage, we lived that. My ex-husband and I, we both were choosing food over discomfort or over each other.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can't speak for him, but for me, I think at times food felt safer than people,
Oh, sure.
or safer than being alone with my thoughts,
Yeah.
or being alone with my feelings. Food felt safer than all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And either way, it took me out of life.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, we have to look at the long list of financial costs of food addiction. So knowing our brain is altered when we are in the food, we don't always have access to our frontal lobe, which houses our braking system, logic center, and long-term consequences. This is a major risk when it comes to finances. Many spend money on therapy or weight loss schemes that don't understand food addiction. They spend money on gym memberships, attempting to out exercise calories, clothes to hide our changing body shape, diet pills as a quick fix, or sleeping supplements because sleep isn't there for them.
Right.
But for me, when I was morbidly obese, and Paige, I had a different experience than you. So, that's why I love that our partnership is the way it is, because we cover all sides of this area of this addiction. For me, I wasn't spending money on gym memberships back in the day. I wasn't attempting to exercise my calories. I wasn't spending a lot of money on clothes. I didn't want to see myself in mirrors, and in stores or under fluorescent lights. I mean, it was torture. So for me, all of my resources and time when I wasn't working or when I wasn't doing something I had to do was spent in food.
Wow.
And on food,
Mm-hmm.
or on experiences around food.
Mm-hmm.
Vacations were centered around food.
Mm-hmm.
So, so there's those costs, right? But as I lost weight, I would spend money on the gym memberships, on clothes to hide, things. Or if I was yo-yoing back when I
Mm-hmm.
didn't understand that I was addicted and couldn't have those foods, if I yo-yoed,
Mm-hmm.
I would have, I'd spend money on different things to try to thwart the next binge.
Mm-hmm.
And here I think that there's lots of impulse buying that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Impulse buying at coffee shops, fast food restaurants, sit down restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
You can't go to I have two dogs, you all know, and I can't go to a pet store. without being barraged with junk and candy at the checkout. Like, it's at a pet store. I'm like, is this for humans or dogs? They're like, oh, that's for humans. I'm like, why? This is a pet store. Why are you
Yeah,
selling me something?
because it makes money
Absolutely.
and you're weak.
Absolutely.
I'm
There's
going to take
vending
advantage of your weakness.
Yeah, there's vending machines, or I'm sure the psychology is, well, I'm getting Fido a treat, so I'm going to get
Yeah,
me a treat.
yeah.
Well, newsflash, it's not a treat. It's not.
Yeah, and the treat for Fido ain't great neither.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the fact that I make all their own food
Yeah,
and I do food prep for my dogs
yeah.
every month or so. I make a huge batch of their food and they get only that food and they thrive. They're thriving.
Mm-hmm.
Thriving. No
Yeah,
illnesses, no skin stuff, no allergies, nothing.
it's so smart.
And it saves money in the long run. I even buy them, they're the ones that eat the nut butters in the house.
Mm.
And I even buy them like single ingredient nut butters
Yeah,
because I'm like, why am I gonna put them into situations they don't need to be in? So anyway, here's the thing. We think it's convenient to get fast food or convenient to go into a grocery store or a gas station store and get these foods. There's nothing convenient about it, right? You're spending a lot of money. If we stopped and added up how much we're actually spending,
mm-hmm.
that's one number. But then look at the hidden costs of food addiction,
Right.
hidden costs of all of the prescriptions, the doctor visits, the mental health providers, the coach, maybe the coaching that you might try to do, to working one-on-one with a new diet
Mm-hmm.
plan,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. It's just, there's so many hidden costs.
Yeah, I mean, those are the big ones, and I have fallen victim to most that you mentioned, of course. If I'd only have all that money back on the stupid things that I have bought in an attempt to try and out trick the addiction, right? I'm gonna try and
Mhm.
I want to be cured, but I didn't want to suffer. Instead of just doing it the only way that works, single ingredient foods would have cleared up most of the concerns on this episode that we're talking about. And it's so sad because this is so simple. The answer is so simple. There's no big secrets here. We are
No.
not going to say, okay, we've got this tricky new way, this plan that's going to, I'm going to sprinkle some fairy dust on you and this way it's going to work. It's not, it's just simple, straightforward. We're transparent. Stick to single ingredient foods. So much of your ails will cure themselves. But
Yeah, and the only
even
way out is through, guys. There's no
yeah,
magic bullet
yeah.
here.
So, even when I was in the food, even the thought of vacation could be terrifying because of all the
Mm.
out of control opportunities everywhere. Quite frankly, I just wanted to stay home and not have to fight it. I'm going to be going on a trip in a couple weeks and I'm starting to get a little nervous. I need to do some mental prep work for that because it's going to be 5 days of eating meals out that where I can't take my food. It's a big group thing. So I need to really buckle down and think that through and get mentally prepared. But the cost in every area seems overwhelming in all these extreme
Yeah,
situations.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely. If you could make a deposit, and I've said everything that I want to say about this topic, but if I could make a deposit into my bank account to pay back or to represent all the money I spent on food addiction, for me, it would be close to $1 million.
oh
Paige,
my
how about you?
gosh. Oh, several 100,000 for sure. At least in the six figures. So for those of you don't know, again, when we release our episode and when it's recorded, there's a little bit of a time delay. So by the time this episode comes out, we will have started our real food recovery online food addiction recovery community is what I'm trying to
Mhm.
say. So the cost of that is $79 a month for this group coaching, how we handle our daily connections hours with people. And one of my friends was being snarky and he said to me, $79 a month, I'd rather die. I said, oh really? I wonder if you really were dying, if that $79 would seem pretty cheap.
Mhm.
So it's a matter of perspective, and I guarantee you all those years that I struggled with sugar addiction, I would have gladly paid $79 a month to have my life back. Cheap in comparison to all the expenses, the mental and emotional, especially torture.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Do you think your job's ever been impacted or your ability to advance by food addiction?
You know, you have a different situation from me. I have always, for the most of my life, been self-employed. Most of my jobs I have created, so not so much for me, but I'm wondering if your answer is much different than mine, being in the corporate world.
Yeah, for sure. It had effect on every aspect of my career. Not only the choices I made in my career as far as the jobs that were offered to me, they were definitely lower level jobs and jobs that were um, high turnover, sales kinds of jobs and
Mhm.
things like that, which is ironic because looking the way I looked and I don't know that I was a picture of health to walk into someone's office and represent a company. So there was an interest there of what was happening, for me and for the companies. But there were times that I was overlooked for promotions, new positions,
Mm.
or jobs of any kind, so many ways. And it might sound harsh, right, to think about people discriminating because of my size, but it happened. I assure you it happened.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't get up in arms about it and create a social media campaign about it and go to the government and ask for laws to be passed about it. I said, I get it. Like, you want somebody representing your organization who people, you know, who see value or health or vitality or um, have a way of presenting themselves that's inspiring or
Right.
inviting. I am not saying that people who are overweight or obese or struggle with food addiction don't have value or are none of those things. I am not saying that. I lived on both sides of this life. I have been on both sides of this fence. And I'm telling you, for me in my career, I had the confidence, my career doors opened in ways. Once I found my health and began recovery, it opened doors for me in ways that it just didn't happen before.
Yeah, I
And I
believe.
was educated and I was skilled and I was good at my jobs, but I did not have the opportunities that I have now. And I'm not saying it's because I'm, walking around in stilettos and a size 6. And no, it's because I have so much more than just health and vitality. I have confidence, I have
Mhm.
wisdom, I have knowledge to apply, and I'm not afraid to my self-esteem, of course, has grown. I'm not afraid to assert and insert myself in different situations. All of those things were affected when I was morbidly obese.
Of course.
And of course I had value back then. And of course I had something to say. And that, guys, that was a travesty. I had so much value to add and so much to say, and I wasn't given the opportunity to do it because people judged me by the way I looked.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I'm not judging anyone, but I'm telling you, I've lived on both sides of this fence, and career options, life options open up when we give ourselves the ability to have those options.
Yeah. That I wasn't there, but I already know that that is true. Yeah. So, tapping onto that, we go into what is the real cost of a food binge? How do we even quantify the real cost of a food binge? And for me, I think, what may take 20 minutes maybe to eat may take days, a few days to recover from mentally, physically, spiritually, in every way. What about
Mhm.
you?
Oh yeah, I mean minutes, right? Minutes to eat something and days and sometimes even weeks, right? Because even if after I felt better, I'd beat myself up for a few more weeks.
Yeah.
Sad but true.
Yeah, just not worth it.
Mm-mm.
So, we talked about cost. How much time would you have back, and how much mental pain would you have avoided in your life if you had never had to deal with processed food addiction? This is an ironic question because when you are deep in the addiction, that's literally all you can think about. Your addiction organizes its day around
Mhm.
making sure that your addiction needs are met. So decades of time for me. What about you?
Oh yeah, I mean, I would have had a totally different financial, emotional, relational, psychological, educational life than I do
Mhm.
today. Not so much today, but up until, my 40s.
Mhm.
My life would look completely different. There is no doubt. And there's other reasons for that, right? There's reasons of childhood trauma and dysfunction, and certainly, the choices that were made by those raising me or influencing me as a child. Those contributed to it, but I believe that those experiences set me up to become the addict that I became. And I've said it before here, but the only reason I did not turn to alcohol and drugs is because at 4 years old, it would look strange to see a 4-year-old throwing back a martini. But eating a brownie or an extra piece of birthday cake, nobody blinked an eye.
Right.
So for me, I that childhood led to the life of addiction, led to these, these outcomes where I am still, rebuilding my financial life, and still rebuilding and learning about my emotional life and relational life. And I say, and I really mean it, not just because I watched the Blue Zones documentary, by the way, but I really mean it. Like, I don't ever want to retire. I have a love for this life, and a love for the work that I do in real food recovery, and the work that I do in my day job.
Mm-hmm.
I I I will work as long as I can work, as long as they'll let me.
Yeah.
And yes, it's because I love it, but it's also because I need to make up for lost time.
Oh,
There's a lot that I lost financially.
wow.
Yeah.
Good point to end on. So the biggest cost to all of this is really our inner peace. Nothing tastes as good as a calm brain feels. So what do we do about it? We find a support group. We connect with others doing the same things. We get educated. We plan and prepare our meals with single ingredient foods.
Mhm.
When we learn to manage stress, and of course, listen to the Real Food Recovery podcast, as well as
That's
if
right.
you're looking for an online food addiction recovery support community, check out our website at realfoodrecovery4u.com. That's the number 4 and the letter U.
Yeah.
And we will be waiting for you there and looking forward to seeing you. So thank you for joining us on this episode. We've got a couple quick listener questions. Jamie, do
Yeah, real
you care
quick.
which one you take?
Uh, the first step, somebody asked about, I've been listening to you guys for a while, and I believe what you're saying. How do I even take the first step? What is the first step? The first step is what's right in front of you. What's the next thing you're doing? What's the next meal you're eating? What's the next thing you're doing? Like, after we're done with this recording today, the first step that I'm taking is walking out the door and getting on my bike and going out for a bike ride. That's the next thing I could do. Could
Mhm.
I turn off my computer and sit in front of the TV and veg with a bag of junk? Yep, sure could. Did it for years. Not today. Not today, right? Taking the pups out, getting some fresh air for them, and then getting me on the bike. Like
Yeah.
that, there's the next right thing all the time.
I remember you telling a story about when you took your first like clean meal, and you're like, I'm just going to do this one meal and see what happens. So that story has stayed with me, that you decided to just do the next right thing right then.
Yes, that's
I've
it.
heard you talk about that a lot.
It's a big saying in recovery, just do the next right thing. And I think there's a better way to say that. I think do the next thing right.
Oh, I like that even better.
Yeah.
It costs more to do it wrong in
Oh, in the
every
long run,
way.
for me, in the long run, yeah.
Shortcuts always take so much longer.
Mhm.
Okay, last listener question for today. I want to be healthier, but I can't afford all the fruits, vegetables, and lean meats. I am on a very limited budget and I have to watch my pennies. Okay, first of all, we understand. We hear this a lot.
Yeah.
So I understand at first glance how you could feel that way, but here's the true story. You can pay now or you can pay later.
Amen, sister.
At some point, the piper has to be paid in life.
Yes.
Sorry, that's just reality. So for me, my grocery store chain has sales every week. I watch and I see what produce is on sale. and stock up on that for that week. That may be our featured vegetable for the week. There's also big box stores. Maybe you can split large quantities with someone else, or we have a local chain called Aldi's. I don't know if that's everywhere, but that's very reasonable. So with a little bit of effort and strategizing, it can be done. I promise you, it's worth the investment in your health. And quite frankly, rice and beans are cheap too. So there
Yes,
is a way to make it work. It just takes a little bit of effort. But like I
that's right.
said, a payment will have to be paid somewhere.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you all for listening. Wonderful, wonderful chat with you today, Paige.
Yeah.
We do encourage you, check out our website, www.realfoodrecovery4u.com, number 4, letter U. And I don't think anyone says www anymore, Paige. I think it's
Oh,
implied.
I am
I
a
think
nerd.
no, I am too, because I did it too. So anyway, guys, check us out. Check us out on our website, and we will see you on the next episode of Real Food Recovery, where we are food plan neutral and processed food free.
Thanks, guys. See you later. Bye-bye.